Hello, everybody. If you can see us and hear us okay, please type llama in the chat or just say hello. Let us know where you're viewing from today. We have hello from Georgia and Luxembourg, Burnaby, Toronto, Canada, Argentina. Welcome, everybody. All right, well, I guess we can go ahead and get started. My name is Kitty, and I will be your host for today's Etchr mini workshop preview. And we are here with Ian de Hoog, who's going to be teaching you a little bit about painting animals in watercolor. So if you have questions for Ian, please put them in the chat in all capital letters so I can see them more clearly. And if they are relevant to what Ian is doing at the moment, I will ask at that time. If not, I might hold off some of those questions until the end when we do our question and answer session. So from here, I'm going to hand it over to Ian, who will tell us a little bit more about what we're doing today.
All right. Thanks, Kitty. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this little, I would almost call it like an appetizer. We're going to look at a couple things today. This is all about something I'm kind of excited about. Worked with Etchr and put together a whole beginner's course. So it's not like your typical beginner's course. We're just kind of do washes and learn all those kind of basic techniques, how to mix color and all those types of things. But it's all based around animals because I paint a lot of birds. I do a lot of animals. So it kind of made sense to do it that way. But then at the same time, we're going to work through that whole thing and learn all your basics of watercolor while we're exploring how to apply it to animals. So I'm totally excited about this. So today's demo is going to be a bit of a, like I said, an appetizer for that whole, it's a 5-week course. So it's like 5 sessions over the course of 5 weeks or something like that. And it's going to be really, really cool. I'm pretty pumped about it. So without further ado, I want to kind of get right into the goal for today, which is just to kind of explore a real simple, it kind of takes into consideration 2 of my main things when it comes to painting, even drawing, which is shape and value. And to do that, we're going to explore a cute little puppy. So all I really have here at this moment, as you can see, is just a little pencil drawing that I just kind of put together. Not like a, intended to be anything you're going to hang on the wall or anything as far as a pencil drawing goes, but it really does kind of give me, it's kind of a little bit bigger than a thumbnail. I like to make little thumbnail drawings before I work on a painting. And the main reason for that is so that I can kind of figure out what values are going to be. So hopefully you've seen the reference for this. It's a friend's photograph of a puppy, cute little thing. So and it's very light in color. There's a little bit of value and some color in the ears and a little bit around the eyes. But I just do a little thumbnail so it kind of gets me in the mindset for what I'm going to do when I'm going to paint, because when it comes to anything that I am going to paint, I want to focus on shapes, values, and then textures. And for me, as long as I can have at least one of those things done really well, it ends up being something that I'm fairly happy with. If I can get 2 or more of those done well, then that's even better. So I'm always starting from the point of view of looking at what it is I'm going to attempt to paint and really taking into consideration the values that are going to make this work. So even without any color in here, just a little bit of pencil, I've got something that, I think looks like the puppy. So little thumbnail thing, just a quick little bit about that. It is something that we will explore in the course. And then what I do after that, because now I'm already thinking differently, right? Often when we, paint some things and whatnot, we just sit there and look at the reference and go to the reference and go to the reference and go to the reference. I try to get a lot of that reference peeking out of the way as early as possible so that I can just focus really on the actual painting part. Because otherwise it's just peekaboo all the time. You look down at what you're painting, and then you look at the reference. And watercolor, it's a medium that requires your attention. It's very needy. In a good way, in a good way. You need to keep an eye on it. You need to watch what the paint's doing on the paper, how it's drying, all that kind of stuff. And if I'm constantly going from, where I'm painting to a reference and back and forth, then I'm not really focused where I need to be. So a little thumbnail like that to look at some values is a very great thing to do when we're starting out. And I'm going to do 2 versions of this. And then we're going to take a look at I got a few paintings off to the side here that we can take a look at the end, if that's okay with everybody. I thought I was going to do it at the beginning, but nice what happens when we're busy making other plans. So what I'm going to do here, just real quick, I always start with the water first. It's an easier way for me to gauge whether I've got enough paint before I start painting, rather than starting with pigment and then adding water to it. And then I'm just fighting this never-ending battle of, is my paint dark enough, light enough? I just first want to start off by making sure I've got enough paint or enough water that I can put pigment in that I know I'm not going to run out, because that is one of the big annoying things for me in painting, is if I start running out of paint when I'm trying to get something done. So the easiest way to avoid that for me is just to make sure I start with the water and then I add the pigment to it. And so we're going to do a quick couple passes on here. It's not going to be anything too crazy, but essentially we're kind of going after what I sort of did with the pencil sketch and just render some value on this left puppy here. And I'm just going to use something very straightforward. It's just like a neutral tint. It's just a neutral gray. Is usually what I refer to it as. Most of the colors in my palette, I rarely refer to them by their actual pigment name, because they do kind of change from time to time. I really just think about colors as far as, cool yellow, cool red, warm red, that kind of thing. Just makes my life a little bit easier. I'm using, this is an Etchr cold press surface sketchbook. I think it's, of the 3 that are available, there's like an A4, A5, A6. This is the one in the middle, therefore I guess that would make it the A5.
Correct.
Right. Sorry, while I process this out loud, huh? Okay. So I mix up some water, add a little bit of pigment to it. I do tend to keep little pieces of paper from, failed experiments in watercolor. And I just kind of use those to swatch a little value out, make sure my values are looking okay. And so we're just going to go right into this little puppy here and put some value on him. And so I just kind of start with some lighter values at first, and always thinking about the fact too that with watercolor, when I put this value down on the paper, if I'm looking at it and it's like, oh, it's perfect, then it's wrong. Because watercolor will lighten as it dries. So I do need to take that into consideration. So I'm really just applying a little bit of paint, more so to what I'm seeing as some of the darker areas on this puppy. And then I'm just going to clean my brush, control a little bit of moisture on it. And I'm just going to kind of come in here and just soften with the brush some of these values. Cleaning it again. Every time I want to go in and soften something, I'm going to go in and clean it, because, as you soften, I'm picking up pigment as well. And so I don't want to start painting with dirty pigment everywhere. I'm just going to push some of this around a little bit. And then I might grab just a little bit more pigment out of my well here. And just come into a couple of these spots where there's a little bit more intense of a value. can come back right down into the toes there. Some little markings down here. I'm not really interested in trying to put a large amount of detail in a lot of these areas. Usually my focus is going to be in and around the face. So anything that I'm doing down in the lower area is going to be fairly loose, right? As you see all these little loose washes, just some value in there. And that's all I really try to get done, especially in the first little area. I'm just going to drop a little bit of water in this and just break some of this up a bit. I mentioned shape, value, and texture. So texture sometimes is dropping a little bit of water into a wash to break it up. So it's just not a big old flat wash. It's something that I do like to do. I'm going to add a little bit more water into this mixture that I've been using because I'm going to go up into the head area, and the head area is a little bit lighter. And so I'm just going to be a little bit careful around the ear there because I don't really want this to drag down into or leak down into the area I just was. And so just building some value around the eyes. I'm trying to do this fairly quick, right? This is another one of the reasons why it's a good idea to start with a little value study. Because I see that value study and I know that if I just get a bunch of value on here, this will kind of look okay. So it gives me a little bit more confidence just to kind of play a little more loosely in the painting process.
Ian, do you have a brush preference?
Well, this brush is one that I use a lot. This is a little calligraphy style brush. It's about a size 8.
Great. And there's a question
close to a. I'm sorry. Once more. Go ahead.
Oh no. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's I tend to prefer, as far as brushes go, a pairing of about a number 12 round and a number 8 round. So this is very comparable to a number 8. And then I have another brush that's bigger right there. And that's about equivalent to a size 12. So I prefer this type of brush. It's always has had a very nice point for me, which I appreciate. And I find that as it gets drier during the painting process, the tip of the brush does tend to splay a little bit, which can allow me all sorts of interesting textures with the brush as well.
And we have a question in the chat asking, why is Ian dabbing his brush on a sponge?
Oh, that's okay. That's a good observation. And a great question. So moisture control, that is what that is all about, because the last thing I want is to load my brush up with paint and then just drop in here with a wet, sloppy brush, because I can make a hot mess of this in a heartbeat if I do that. So if you think about, I don't know if this is a correct way to discuss it, but I mean, I'm self-taught as a painter, so this is kind of how I've come to understand it. I like fountain pens. I like to use a fountain pen. And so with the brush, you've got the belly and you've got the tip. And then a lot of the moisture that you pull up when you go into your well there, a lot of that moisture is kind of held in that belly. But when you lift it out of there, there's also a fair bit that's just kind of hanging off in the tip there. So that I don't want, because that usually, well, that will kind of keep the tip kind of fatter and with less control. So I usually go into the sponge, and I just do it without even thinking about it now. But when I do it, it just pulls that excess moisture out of the tip of my brush and allows me to get my point back while not taking a whole bunch of moisture out of the belly. So I can still lay down an awful lot of paint in a pass, but I haven't emptied my brush. So, and I get some control. So that's what that's all about. So already you can see with just a quick couple passes, all I've done here is just value. It's already starting to have a little bit of dimension to it. A little bit of dark starting to establish in the nose there, and these little darks down here. And I would keep an eye on these as I'm building this, because I don't want these to get too dark. Ultimately, even in looking at the image with the pencil, right? It's the eyes and the nose and the little mouth are kind of the darkest spots, and there's a little bit of shadow value over by the ear over here are kind of the darker areas. So I've already kind of got some of that set up in this. So here comes a brief little annoying part, just because of the fact that we're, you know, in a time sensitive situation. I'm going to use a little hair dryer here. So hopefully this auto reduces the noise. Otherwise, my apologies for a moment here.
And everybody, if you are following along, we would love to see what you've created. So I'm putting the tags for Etchr Studio and for Ian into the chat for when you share on Instagram or Facebook.
Okay, so that's a little dry there, a little bit. Could probably done a little bit more, but it should probably be okay. Okay, so now I've got most of my main values in. I really didn't have to go into the nose at that point, but since, you know, I was there, I knew that I hadn't really put a lot of paint around it, so I felt pretty safe. I always want to be mindful of what's wet and what's dry, right? Because depending on what's wet or dry, that's going to determine the type of edge that's going to appear on the paper when I apply my brush to it. If it's wet, I'm going to get kind of softer edges. And if it's dry, I'll get harder edges. So I knew this was dry all around here, and I really wanted the edge of this nose and this little bit of the mouth to be defined. So I wouldn't have gone in here if I knew that area was wet. So just a little bit of info there. Now, once we get this kind of initial pass, we have a little bit of value that's showing up. Then I'm going to go in and just layer a little bit. So certain areas that need a little more value. So I would come into, say, the eye. And these are all values that are driven by that sketch, right? If I do a little thumbnail sketch and slowly work out, or quickly, preferably, because they don't have to take that long. Slowly work out the values with pencil and look at it and go, hey, that looks pretty decent. You know, there's a good chance that's going to work out when I do the painting as well. So I just kind of go, okay, then I know kind of the direction I'm heading. And I haven't even actually, there is a reference off the side here, but I haven't even really looked at it yet. Now I'm just going right off of the little sketch I did. So there's a little value in the eye. I can put a little, he's got some color underneath the eye, but it's kind of got a softer edge. So I'm just touching the brush just below And then I'm just going to clean that. Get some of that excess moisture out of my brush, even if it's just water. And then it's going to come under here and just kind of soften. And just let some of that kind of run down a little. Already about 10% cuter. It's all in incremental cute percentages. That's how we determine all this stuff.
There's a comment in the chat saying super cute.
Super cute, yeah.
Super cute.
It's a very scientific process.
Exactly.
Cuteness. So just going in, and I don't worry. You may, if you all have the reference kind of nearby where you are, you might be looking and kind of going, oh, there's a little line of the fur here, a little line of the fur there. I don't care, right? It's just, what's the direction? Where's it going, right? And I'll just move the brush that way and then just deal with that. It just makes it so much easier. I often joke, and sometimes it's not totally a joke, but a lot of what I do is because I'm lazy. I just try to find a nice, straightforward, simple way to accomplish things that look like I really tried. That's not entirely true, but it's not too far off from the truth. I mean, really, my preference is a nice, loose look to watercolor. So it makes sense to have this kind of approach for me, right? And I've always had this, vision of painting in my head, just like splashing around paint, and all of a sudden the image just appears like magic. I mean, it doesn't really, for me, work out that way, but painting in a loose manner does give me the illusion that I'm kind of doing that sort of thing. So that's always kind of fun. So now just a little bit of value in and around the eyes there just helps to pop this area up a little bit. And that's really all I'm doing, is just increasing value, right? And I think it's important to work monochromatically from time to time, because it really helps you to see the importance of building value. It's not just about getting colors right. You can get the colors right and have terrible value and end up with not great painting.
And Ian, there's a question in the chat. Do you have a brand of watercolor that you prefer or that you're using?
Right now, well, not right now. That's kind of funny. Yeah, I have been using Daniel Smith watercolors for a number of years. I started out using M. watercolors when I started watercolor, and they're quite lovely as well. They're out of Oregon. And then there was a color by Daniel Smith that I had seen that was just like, oh, desert island color, really. And it's right here in my palette, this one right there. Green gold. It's just this lovely chartreuse color. It's beautiful.
It's a very happy color.
It's a very, which one?
It's a very happy color.
Yeah, it's happy. It can be very green. It can also be very yellow. It's very versatile. So that kind of, once I got that and started playing around with that pigment, I was a little bit hooked. In the area that I lived at the time in Ontario, it wasn't, the paints weren't as easily accessible. I had to kind of go into Toronto to a store that had Daniel Smith. So I didn't have many of them. And then we moved out to the West Coast again, which is where I'm originally from. And there's a art store chain in BC, art supply, called Opus, and they stocked Daniel Smith. So the obsession began. So what I did on the other side, just putting a little bit of value in the ear. I'm just going to do the same on the other. And just kind of, having some awareness that there's a change in value on the ear. So I just kind of put in some marks. And this is often what I'll do. I just put in little marks, and then I just go in and just kind of soften them up a little bit. I love a nice mixture of soft and hard edges in a watercolor. It's one of the things, and you can accomplish similar looks with other mediums, but I find that it's just one of these types of effects in watercolor that's, at least for me, so much easier to accomplish. I'm sure a real veteran oil painter would be like, oh, I can do that with oil paint in like 2 seconds, no problem. But for me to try to get a similar effect with any of those mediums, it would take me forever. Okay, so a little bit of value there. And I'm just going to hit this thing with a little bit of the hairdryer again. So once again, my apologies. And then we're just going to jump into a similar version of this with a little bit more color. So one moment. There we go. And so I grab a little bit more paint. I still have the water, some excess water here in the well. And then, now the nice thing about watercolor too is it layers, right? You would notice this already. Just, I had some value in there, and then I'm building on top of it. And as I do that, it's slowly building value in my painting. So I've got a little area around the nose here that needs a little bit of value on top of this.
And Ian?
I'm listening.
We have a question in the chat saying, did you transfer the image or redraw them onto your sketchbook?
I redrew them. Yeah, once you get the one, it's easy just to kind of, I sort of drew this one and then transferred that one sort of over here because they're very similar in size, but there's some differences in the way that I drew a couple things in here. And that's actually an interesting thing too, while we're while the topic is on the table. In the course, the very first class that we do is actually going to be all about drawing and how to figure out your shapes and how to get your shapes drawn well. So which I think is a very important part of the watercolor process. Because watercolor is such a transparent medium, our drawing is the bones of what we're gonna do. So we really want to make sure that we can create good shapes with our pencil or whatever it is you choose you're going to do your drawing with. So just going in and putting a little bit more value. So now I'm kind of at a third value here. I had a very light value in the first pass and then slightly heavier in the second. And now I'm just going in really and looking for some darker areas that I can build up.
Oh, he's really starting to come to life now.
I know, right?
Aw. You just up the cuteness again.
Yep, another percentage increase in the L-Cute department. He's a cute puppy. All right, and I should probably just gonna soften a little bit of that as well. So now the eyes pop a little bit more, and adding that extra little bit of darkness really helps the catch lights stand out a bit more, which is another good thing. And then I'm just gonna add one little bit of value into this one. And when you work in a layered manner too, it also gives you an ability to focus on the building of value, right? So I do kind of tend to like the eye area to be kind of one of the darker ones, things in and around the face. So I know that if I kind of work through a process like this, by the time I'm done, I do have that sort of aesthetic where the eyes and the details and around the face are the lighter or darker ones.
Ian, we are having a little conversation in the chat here about color mixing and just color theory. Is that something that you'll be going over in the course?
I go over the way I approach color, yes.
Great.
Yeah, and I find it's kind of interesting to discuss. It's very important, but I don't like to get too into the pigments. I like to think about colors as warm and cool, and a lot of this has come out of teaching so much in the past couple years, where I mean, not so much now because we all are going to keep social distancing and stuff when we're teaching in person. Right. But prior to that, I'd be coming to someone's setup and trying to help them with something, and then I would be just going into their paints, or sometimes to make a point, someone might say, it's like, well, it's because you're using these paints, that's why. I'm like, no, I can do it with your paints too. And then you go into theirs, and it's just like, you just need to work on your consistencies and your moisture control and stuff like that. It's not so much about, it does have to some degree, you need to have an understanding about the paints, but in going into other people's palettes, I needed a way to really understand my own palette so I kind of could comprehend what it was that was in theirs. I didn't want to have to look at their color map, like a 38 or 48, palette of colors in there. I'm like, what's in there? Like, oh my goodness, that's a lot of paint. But I just need to look at take a quick glance at a palette and kind of go, okay, there's my warm yellow, there's my cool yellow, there's my warm red, there's my cool red, there's my, insert combination there. And once I've got that eyeballed, I can just dig right into almost any palette and make something that's going to largely look like what I would normally do. So yes, that's a very long response to a simple question. Yes, we'll be talking about color.
Right.
So, all right. So very straightforward. You can see values in the pencil sketch, and then we can kind of look at it next to the slightly painted version that, try to stick to what I saw and the values, and now rendering them with paint. And we end up with a pretty cute little doji. Now I'm going to do this a fair bit quicker. We're at about a half an hour. I kind of hope to be, well, I don't hope to be, I can hang out and talk about paint forever. But the idea is that this would last up to about 45 minutes. So So I'm just getting rid of some of that. And all I'm really going to do now is use color instead of just monochromatic. So in some areas where, you know, this puppy's got some color to him, we're going to deal with those. Other than that, it's not going to be, you know, really different, because even when I'm using color, I need to be thinking about value. And I think for this, I'm going to use probably a little bit of that neutral that I was just using. I'll still use that, but the main color that I kind of see in this puppy is ochre. So I'm going to be using some ochre for the puppy. And then again, this could be maybe, you know, kind of like the idea about, talking about color theory and stuff like that. Because I'm using kind of a yellow in some of the shadowier areas of the doogie here, I want to go to a complement. So I will gravitate towards a little bit of a violet, just because it's a nice complement. I don't want anything like, you know, slap you in the face, kind of bright. I just want just a little hint of a complement in there. I think will work really nice. So there's a little bit of color theory right there. Working with complements. You see it quite often in warm cool painting studies, using, like, say, blue, ultramarine, and a burnt sienna or something like that. So the approach is going to be largely similar, except now I've got some color in here. And this isn't, you know, if you're looking at this color going, oh, that's not the color. Well, it isn't, but it's what I see and what I want to do, right? And hopefully, when it works out, it's going to be a little testament to how important value is. I can use a yellow and a purple to do a lot of this stuff, and it'll still work. If I were going to go a little more accurate with this, I would probably put a little bit of maybe some burnt umber or something like that into this. Probably put it closer. Okay, so I've kind of spent enough time away from these washes over here that I need to actually get back there and soften some of this stuff, because I do have a limited amount of time once I apply some paint to get back to it and give it the soft edges. If I let it sit for too long, it will start to settle in and create a hard line on the paper. So again, that's all part of, because I'm focused on dealing with value and doing a little study, I'm not working with my eyes completely trained on a reference, so I can pay attention to the moisture levels on here. If I was jumping back and forth to a reference and not tuned into my painting, I might not have noticed that some of those edges were drying, and I might have missed my opportunity to go in there and soften them. All right, so I get some little yellow in there. And it's going to come in here and just soften some of that. And yes, I started in the bottom on the first one, but I decided to go more towards the face in this one. So it does have a little bit of a shadow side here and some little pockets of shadow. I'm just going to use the purple in some of those, Just trying to watch the moisture level on my brush here. There we go. It's working there. And then most of this stuff down below is going to end up being kind of like how I did with the gray.
And everyone, I'm just going to take this opportunity to mention that we have a private Facebook group where you can share your work if you'd like, just to share, or if you'd like some feedback. It's a really kind place to get some feedback. It's always a positive experience. And I'm going to put that link into the chat right now.
So I'm just getting some of this laid in and around here, similar to what I did before, playing with some of the value a little bit. And there. I'm going to drop a little bit of water in here, let it sit for a second, and then I'm going to go in and give this a quick little dry. And then we'll layer some value on top of it, and hopefully the puppy will start appearing again. So once I drop a little bit of water in like I've done there, I usually like to give it just a couple moments to settle before I assault it with the hairdryer. Just give those colors a chance to mix. Actually, while it's wet there, I'm going to take a little bit of my dark and just go in and get some of these areas. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to grab one additional color, just a little bit of burnt umber. I'm just going to take that and just put a light little pass of burnt umber just around the warmer, the iris. If it's a little bit big, that's fine, because I will be going over top of it. And then speaking of going over top of it, I'm going to go into my dark again. And we're just going to go and start building a little bit of value. just like we did with the other one. The main difference is I've just used a couple colors just to give it a different look. And I could have been, more selective about those colors and try to go, as I mentioned, more true to what's there. But you can kind of use whatever color you want. As we're sort of thinking about value. Get in there. As these little pieces start to appear, I want to go in there, but I'm going to wait. Actually, I'm going to take that ochre, and I am going to add a little bit of burnt umber to it. I'm going to use that to build some value in here. Just so it's a little bit stronger. It's really all I'm after. Just like before, putting it in, coming in, letting it soften. And even though I've added some stronger value, it still maintains that characteristic of the lighter value underneath. And I'm going to take some more of that. You can put that underneath the eyes and in some of these areas here. Again, just focused on building value, except now I'm doing it with color. And you could even be doing this with like a palette of greens, and it would still work as long as you're paying attention to value, which can give you a lot of leeway in the exploration of colors and experimentation. This guy's getting pretty close to done here. Come into this nose area. Just build a little bit more value up in the nose. And I'm going to hit it with a dryer again. Did lose. There was a value that was right in here earlier. And it lightened quite a bit on me. So I'm just going to put a little bit more in there. There we go. Give a little punch with the hairdryer. And we'll grab some dark again. And again, going into that sponge and controlling the moisture on my brush before I try to come in here. Otherwise, I'm using a number 8, as I mentioned earlier, while coming in here and painting. And if I had a really wet number 8 brush, I could be making a real big mess in here. So without the moisture control, this would not be very fun. So now this puppy starts showing up again.
There he is. It's like as soon as you put the eyes on any creature, they come to life.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I know some people like to start with the eyes and get them done right away. I don't. I like to get a part of it done. I like to see a little bit of the color. But as far as like finishing it, I like to leave that closer to the end. It's just like that little bit of a reveal at the end. And that comes from, you know, when you have a process of doing things, you know that part's coming. So, I mean, you put a dozen donuts in front of me and I have a hard time with delay of gratification. But when it comes to something like this, it's like, yeah, I know this process well enough that if I were just to leave it for a little bit, I know I can get there and get that last little piece in the eye and it'll work out. I'm just going to go in and just soften a little bit under these. And I'm just missing a little bit of value on the side over here, I think. So I'm just going to go in and add a little bit of value there, a little bit over here, I think. There we go. And so there's a quick color version. I'm just going to do one thing. It's just the eyes a little bit arresting because the brown is so bright. So I'm just layering just a tiny little bit of my neutral gray over top of the eye just to tone it down a little. So yeah, there we go. So
Aww.
Mono, and then in a little bit of color, trying to, again, focus on really just creating the values, right? Whether you're using a little bit of color or no color at all, you're still seeing some value being developed in the areas. And that's kind of one of the main things that we want to focus on.
Great.
So that's what I hope to kind of convey today. So that and a whole bunch of other things leading into kind of, you know, more in the later versions of the course, we're really going to be working through some more finished, like a lot of the stuff's going to be studies until we get nice and solid in the foundations for watercolor. And then once we got those grasped, we're going to start looking at, you know, doing some more finished painting. So here's another monochromatic version. A little bit more time spent on something like this. Just a little black and white study of a horse. Hopefully this looks like a horse to everybody.
In comments saying amazing and beautiful work, Ian.
And then you know, a little snake. Again, just paying attention to values, lighter areas, shadow areas, and then in these shadow areas, just letting washes go and be watercolor. Some hard edges, right? And then you have lots of soft edge washes, some soft, hard edge into a soft edge, same over there. These types of things. This is going to be one of the things that we're going to be looking at in the course, is painting a clownfish, which is a really nice opportunity to talk about mixing really bright, vibrant colors, because this is this bright as you see it on the screen right now. And some people have, well, I did. I say some people. Even when I say some people, just insert me. A long-standing association with watercolors as being very light and pastel-y, but they don't have to be. They can be bright and punchy. Absolutely. And then, you know, standard repertoire for me is a little bird. And here's another little dog.
Aww.
Right. And again, this is more along the lines of, if I had a little bit more time, I would start playing with it a bit more in there. But, you know, that's not really the intention of what I wanted to show today. This is more in doing a finished painting. Today, I just wanted to show rendering value two ways, one monochromatically, and then trying to go for a similar representation of value while using color. So this is kind of that, but also in the same time, I was actually playing with colors to try to still convey a sense of the dog. So he's a cutie.
So, Ian,
so thanks everybody.
well, before we talk about the mini work, the series a little bit more, there's a question that everybody has been like chomping at the bit about, so I want to get that one out there right away. What is that palette you're using? That metal palette. Everyone wants to know like what it is, where they can get it.
Yeah, it just arrived in March this year, and I ordered it well over a year before that. So yeah, I had it made. So
awesome.
It's a big metal brass. It's a brass palette. So
yeah, if you do Google brass palettes, you'll find a number of options there.
Yeah, and it's custom painted green too, so which I really quite dug. So yeah, this isn't, you're not gonna head into you know, Dick Blick's or Opus or Curry's or Cheap Joe's or anything and go grab this off the shelf. I had to speak to somebody and wait patiently.
So we have some questions about the series. So let's talk about that a little bit. The series is 5 weeks. It starts on November 20th. It's at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Eastern Standard Time, which is a Saturday.
Basically the same time of day as today.
Exactly. And there are a couple of weeks that are being skipped because of the holidays. So right now I'm going to put those dates into the chat.
Part of me knew that. That's why I said 5-ish.
Yeah. Yeah, so we've got that. And in these classes, you're going to learn about the drawing, the sketching, the watercolor foundations, color and value. And we did have a question in the chat asking, in the description of the class, what is guide citing?
Okay, someone put that in copy. I need to find that.
Yeah.
which class is that?
I think that is, let me see what week that is. Hold on 1 second. I think it's week 5 or 6. No, 4 or 5.
I'm just trying to find my Google Drive right now.
In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and put the link to the series into the chat. And let's see. Oh, and there was also a question about what happens if you miss a class due to timing, if you can't be there live. All the classes are recorded, so you will have access to them. So if you can't make it to any, you'll still be able to see them. The video will be available just a couple of days out of the after the live event.
So I think that I just took a look at it. So it's been, I think, slightly returned from what I discussed, because what it was originally called was directing the eye. And so now I'm hearing what you're saying is guide sighting. I would think that the ing is in the wrong spot.
Yes.
Guiding sight. So that's so when we get to the 5th class, that's when we get into some more I don't know if you want to call it advanced, but more compositionally oriented things in a painting. So for example, trying to lead the eye to where you want it to go, right? So just even in this little study of the puppy, right, there's a little bit more effort done in and around the head. So the head has a bit more of a sense of detail than down in the body. And the eye is attracted to contrast. So combinations of light and dark, but also, in my opinion, contrast can be the presence or lack of detail and definition. So less definition, more definition acts as a little bit of a draw. And then on top of that, we also have a lot more contrast happening in this area. So just with a couple of real simple techniques, this is part of kind of guiding sight up to where you want it to go. So does that make more sense?
Yes, I think that's pretty clear. We also have a question here saying, how long will we have access to the course recordings? As long as Etchr is around, which will hopefully be a long time. So you can watch them anytime that you'd like. And you can also review them. So if you're watching a class and you're busy painting and you miss a few tips here or there, you can go back and redo them. So there's that. And let's see, is there anything else that you would like to tell us about the class? Like anything else, any other specific skills that you would like to let us know about?
No, I think, I think that if there's a lot of information. We're gonna cover a lot of things. So I mean, if you have a basic awareness of some watercolor terms like flat washes, graded washes, wet on wet, wet on dry, a lot of these types of things, and kind of go, oh, nice to learn those things. All those foundations, that's really what the course is about, right? You can, if you like animals, then it's perfect. But at the same time, this is a watercolor beginners class. We're going to learn all that stuff, and at the same time, we're going to apply it to animals as we go through. And then if you decide by the time you're done, it's like, you know what? I love this watercolor thing, but I hate animals. Then, I don't know why that would be the case, but you still have a great set of tools that you could apply to something else then. Whatever that would be, I don't know. But it's not, I don't paint anything in a manner that applies only to that thing, right? The way I paint animals, I apply the same process to landscapes, streetscapes. I think about similar principles when I'm doing urban sketching. It just really helps keep things simple for me, because I do tend to lean towards obsessing over details and that sort of stuff. So having a nice clean process allows me to kind of stay a bit looser, have more fun with this, and really enjoy this medium that I have grown to absolutely love. So
excellent.
So I don't know if that helped.
We actually have one more question asking, does that palette have a specific name?
John Hurtley is the guy that made it.
John Hurtley? Okay, great. Yeah. Oh, and there's a question also about the fee for the 5-week class. The class is about $40 American dollars. And when you go to the website, it will tell you exactly how much it is in your currency. All right, so from here, I am going to put a couple more links into the chat. Once again, the link to the workshop series and also our feedback link. We would love to hear what your experience was in today's demo so that we can keep bringing you content that you will enjoy.
Yeah, I hope you all learned something today.
I know I did, so I hope everyone else did too.
Well, it's good, and you get to sit on a lot of these. So if you're still learning things,
yeah.
that's good. I'm
Yeah, I
happy
mean,
with
that's
that.
the thing. No matter how many of these I watch, even if it's the same subject, same topics, I always learn something new. So this is great. I mean, that's why, we have all these different classes. So you can pick up new things from new teachers all the time. Yeah, so we do these free demos every couple of days. So please do subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to stay up to date for when we go live. We also have our Make More Art podcast, product demonstrations, and much more. And thank you so much, Ian, for everything you taught us today. Is there any final parting words before we go?
No, I mean, I hope to see you in the course. It's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, I couldn't be more excited about this. I'm really excited to get going on it, and hopefully we'll see you there.
I can't wait to see all the cuteness.
Well, I think most of them are all fairly cute. I mean, some people have differing opinions on fish, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, fish can be cute.
Yeah. So, and actually, I think the cool thing too is once the course is all done too, I think we're going to be offering 2 master classes in late January. That will be more in line with like a lot of the more finished paintings that I do. So more intensive projects.
All right. Well, I guess we can go ahead and wrap up. So thank you again, Ian, and thank you everyone for watching today. And until we see you next time, make more art. Goodbye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. See you soon.